Research tells us that it takes 5 or more positive interactions to override one negative interaction. Leaders often fail to recognize people doing things well because they're so focused on problem solving. Creating a habit of recognizing what people are doing well and taking the extra step of recognizing them for their efforts, it can create a better relationship between you, the leader, and your team. Not to mention, it can make others more open to the corrective feedback when it's needed. And we know in leadership, corrective feedback is coming. So these deposits that we can make into people with positive feedback can make all the difference in our leadership impact. Today on the Champion Forum podcast, we discuss the power of positive feedback.
This is the Champion Forum podcast with Jeff Hancher, the forum for leaders, champions, and dreamers.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am your host, your biggest fan, Jeff Hancher, and I am on a mission to help everyone lead, inspire, and win in this life. Today, we're diving into a subject that I spend a lot of time talking about with leaders, with executives, with entrepreneurs, you name it. We're talking about the power of positive feedback. Did you know that employees who receive regular positive feedback, they're 3 times more likely to be engaged with their work? This is a compelling reason that we should be talking about this. And I get it. This is not a moment where you're like, all right, Jeff, positive feedback. I got it. I got the memo. I agree with you. And you might be thinking right now that this topic is so obvious and you already get this. You already understand the value of it. And you're probably right. The reason I talk so much about this is not because it's a topic that's hard to grasp. I talk about it so much because for most leaders, they have not adopted it as a habit. And there's reasons why this happens. It's not because when you hear, hey, there's power in positive feedback, that you disagree with it and you're kind of rebelling against positive feedback. There's reasons why leaders don't adopt this as a habit. And we're going to talk through that. I'm going to break this episode really into 3 segments. We're going to talk about why positive feedback matters, why some leaders struggle with it, I would say quite a few. And the third area is strategies to improve so that we can make positive feedback part of our leadership routine. So let's start with the why. Why does positive feedback matter? Well, Glassdoor, they recently did a national survey that told us that 69% of employees, they say they would work harder if they felt like their efforts were more appreciated. Imagine that. They would work harder. Isn't that really what we want? We want people that are above reproach. They're ready to put in the time. They do more than expected. We know what we want from our teams as leaders. We know what our expectations are. The question I'm asking today is, have we earned the right? This power of positive feedback has many benefits. We know through data it increases employee engagement and employee satisfaction, that it strengthens trust and relationships that you're building with your team. It encourages repeat positive behaviors. It's not such a bad idea for innovation as well. Remember, what gets recognized, it gets repeated. We can't just talk about what we want. We have to insert deposits. Highlighting someone's strengths, it can help generate a sense of accomplishment and a motivation. Think about maybe times when somebody has called out a strength in your life. You're like, wow, that felt good. Maybe that's an area that I should be focused on. This happened to me early in my life. My 9th grade health teacher, she gave us this assignment that we had to do a public oral essay, a presentation in front of our entire class. Now, this was health class. So it had to be something about fitness, about taking care of our bodies, anything that had to relate to that. And I'm just like trying to figure out with everything in me, what am I going to talk about? I wasn't a good reader. I didn't really want to go to the library. I didn't really want to do a lot of research. And so really, I just started thinking about what could I talk about that would come natural to me? And I thought, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to talk about my mom's disease. My mom had a disease called lupus, an autoimmune disease. And I was just going to talk about how it impacted our family, what lupus was, kind of just educate my classmates on what this disease was and the impact that it had on my family. Well, what I found was, as I was giving this presentation and talking about this disease, I started to get kind of emotional, but I didn't want to lose composure, but I wanted my classmates to really understand what was this disease and how disease can really tear apart a family. And I got emotional, and I started seeing some of my classmates get emotional, and I saw my teacher get emotional. And in that moment of this high emotion, I didn't know if it was good or if it was bad, but I felt like people were hearing what I had to say. This teacher held me back from my classmates and said, Jeff, I want you to stay behind. I want to talk to you about your presentation. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she knows I didn't do any research. She knows that I didn't, prepare for this. It was probably obvious to her, but that's not at all what happened in this moment. She said, Jeff, I want you to know I've been doing this public presentation thing for years. And out of all the years that I've been doing this, I've never had anybody, any student I've ever had, stand up in front of their classmates and make the kind of impact that you just made. She said, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this, but you have a real gift to communicate. That was the first time in my life that anybody ever noticed this gift or called it out in me. Isn't it ironic today that now I stand before hundreds of people and give presentations why? What was it? There was some affirmation. She saw something in me. It made me feel like maybe this is an area I need to focus on. You know what I started to do? I started to look for opportunity to do it again because I remember how it felt and I remembered what she said. And I thought to myself, maybe I'm onto something here. She called out my gift and it made me seek to do it more. I wonder if we could do that with our teammates. Are we calling them out? Are we looking for these opportunities? So this is why positive feedback matters. Let's talk about why then leaders struggle sometimes with positive feedback. And by the way, I'm raising my hand. This has been me. This is an area that I've had to be intentional with. I think what we can agree on, though, is that there is value in giving positive feedback. So it does beg the question then, why is it not a habit for so many leaders? There's common reasons for this. If you're a high-performing leader, you're probably very task-driven. A high-performing leader becomes task-driven, and these type of leaders often focus on tasks and metrics. And when we do that too much, we start neglecting the human aspect of leadership. And this is where we can come off the rails pretty quickly. Sometimes these leaders are afraid that being too positive, it might make them look soft and weak. Well, surely we wouldn't want that. Well, the key here is to have healthy boundaries. Here's what we mean by this. High praise with the same amount of high accountability, that's the sweet spot. The leader that says, look, I don't want to give high praise and a lot of positive feedback because my team's going to think I'm soft and weak. Well, here's the response to that. Don't be soft and weak. You can give high praise and high accountability. Matter of fact, the real catastrophe in leadership is when we're giving high accountability and not high praise. Because then we become what? A micromanager, a dictator. Nothing's ever good enough for me. The other reason might be some just sheer discomfort. Some leaders feel very awkward giving praise, or they might even think it might come off as insincere because of their personality type. Maybe you have a bias towards improvement, right? Leaders might concentrate more on correcting mistakes than celebrating wins. This is a bias towards improvement. Now, I might get some pushback here. Are you looking, though, more for mistakes than you're looking for people doing things right? Now, there's an argument for correcting mistakes, and I get it. I mean, after all, you don't need to go far out of your office to find mistakes, isn't it true? You just walk down the hallway, you'll find some. And if you're addressing mistakes, isn't that improving productivity? I'll tell you what, we can really justify this one. Now, look, don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying or suggesting that you should look past mistakes. I'm not saying that. But what you dwell on is what you're going to find. If you're out looking for mistakes, you're going to find mistakes. My question is, are you out looking for opportunities to give positive feedback? That's the challenge here. Are you seeing people doing things right and calling it out? The other reason that we may avoid this is time constraints. Positive feedback often takes a back seat when we're in a fast-paced environment. I mean, look, Jeff, we're just trying to get through the fight here. You know, the finish line is ahead. I don't have time to stop and tell somebody, atta boy, atta girl, and give them a pat on the back. How about the pat on the back is Friday when I give them their paycheck? We're good. No, we're not good. You always have to be looking at not taking time, but investing time. This is a leadership opportunity to invest time that's going to pay big return. I talk about this subject quite a bit in my book that's coming out June of 2025. It's a hallmark of the book, quite frankly. Specifically in chapter 3, I talk about the fact that if you're going to make big withdrawals from people, it means that you're also going to need to make big deposits. Positive feedback is the deposit. This is the deposit that earns you the right to make the withdrawal. I still remember, like it was yesterday, how I felt when my executive assistant, Karen, when I was back in the corporate world, told me she didn't feel like anything she ever did was good enough. I was shocked. How could she not know that I didn't appreciate her work? Karen and I had rapport. We had worked together for a long time. I mean, we had the kind of relationship that I knew her kids. I knew her husband. We had good relational value, I thought. This seemed impossible. How could Karen think that I didn't appreciate her work? I knew that I constantly, commented to my wife and coworkers about how much I loved Karen and how much easier she made my job. Like, I felt like I was doing this. And she tells me one day that she didn't feel valued. That no matter what she did, it was never good enough. To which I responded, "What are you talking about, Karen? What are you talking about? You do incredible work," I told her. "I don't know what I would do without you." Here comes Karen. "You never say thank you. You never say thank you to me." And I could feel her emotion in the conversation. You never say thank you. It's always do more, task driven. You never take time to even tell me if I'm doing a good job, a bad job, all of this stuff. And here's the thing, she wasn't even mad. She was hurt. And boy, did this open up some conversation. She told me I was high strung. She told me that all I did was barked orders and that I never took time to say thanks or appreciate how hard that she was working for me and our team, how hard she would work to try to keep up with the demands of the pace. This was a crushing blow to me. When Karen criticized me for being hard to please, I realized that the deposits I was making into her were not significant enough for the number of withdrawals that I was making. To me, I was just giving feedback. It never carried any kind of emotional weight. I was just looking for ways for us to get better, take the hill, win the trophy, hit the number. But to Karen, the number of corrections outweighed the number of positive interactions that we had. I would always find things for Karen to get better at, or do more, or go faster, or get it to me earlier. To ensure that Karen believed that I was happy with her work, I had to work and be intentional on going out of my way to compliment the things she did well, and ensure that my communication did not come off as harsh or unhappy, because sometimes no news isn't good news. Sometimes, hey, alpha leader that's listening, direct leader that's listening, task-driven leader that's listening, sometimes people on your team need a smiley emoji. They need that. They need that affirmation. They need that positive feedback. This isn't about what we need. Maybe you don't need that. Well, you're not everybody. I've never gone fishing and put a Snickers bar on the hook. You know why? Because fish don't eat Snickers bars. They eat worms. I'm not putting on the hook what I like to eat. I'm putting on the hook what the fish likes to eat. Do we know our people? Are we getting moving too fast that we lose sight of the human element and the ability to give positive feedback? You have to make deposits in order to make withdrawals. At the bank, you overdraw your account if you take out more than you have put in. We know this. In business, when you take out more than you put in, you create resentment, just like Karen had that day. Employees who feel like you're overly critical or expect them to work beyond their normal job description, they become disengaged and eventually they quit. You have to maintain the deposits that you make into your team so that they develop a level of trust that will allow you to call them to higher standards when you need to. And you will need to call them to higher standards. And you will need to make withdrawals. My question is, are you making the deposits? Number 3, we're going to talk about the strategies to improve this. So we've already talked about the why behind it. Why is it that some leaders fall behind? I'm going to give you in this third phase of this episode, what can you do to improve here? Because this is not natural for everybody. Maybe I'm so passionate about this subject because it was not natural for me. I didn't need a lot of positive affirmation. I just wanted to win. I didn't really care if I got a trophy or an attaboy. I just wanted to win. So how do we become more intentional to make these valuable deposits? Well, here's some things to consider. You've heard me probably on this show, if you're a long-time listener, talk about the 50-cent pieces. I teach this in my performance management workshop. The worst performance review that I ever got, I got a 2 rating out of a 4, meaning I needed to improve in an area. Me, Jeff Hancher, I know. I was used to getting 3s and every once in a while a 4, but rarely would I get a 2 needs improvement. And it was in this area of giving positive feedback. Now, by the way, when I got a 2 on this area, needs improvement, I was the sales manager of the region that year. And to me, I'm looking at my boss and saying, what are you talking about? We crushed our number. We beat our number by X%. And you're talking to me about I need more deposits. And he said, Jeff, if I can be frank with you, I think that you beat your number so much because you made people bleed a lot. And you just beat them into getting things done and moving faster and row faster and move and go. And he's like, look, it worked for you this year, but it's not going to be sustainable. And he pulled 3 50-cent pieces out of his pocket and he threw them across the desk to me. And he said, moving forward, your day can't end until 3 50-cent pieces go from your left pocket to your right pocket. He said, every morning that you wake up, I want you to take these 3 50-cent pieces from your nightstand, put them in your left pocket. Before you can close down the day, they have to be in your right pocket. How they move from left to right pocket is that you find somebody doing something amazing and you let them know about it. This is the deposit. The 50-cent pieces are a reminder. Maybe you're listening and you're like me. You got so busy focusing on the task at hand, you lost sight of people. Maybe you need to go down to the local bank and give them $1.02 and tell them you need 3 50-cent pieces. And you need to begin this practice as well to create a habit. Other things that you can do. Be specific. When you're giving positive feedback, avoid generic phrases like, good job. Instead say, I really appreciated how you handled fill in the blank. Maybe it was a difficult client call that they had. Hey, you handled that difficult client with tremendous patience and great professionalism. And I just wanted to say, great job with that. If you're not specific, it's fleeting. It might give them a dopamine hit, which isn't a bad thing, but it's not going to give a repeat performance. Think about the health teacher. Don't just say that somebody did a good job. Call out exactly what it was. The other thing is be timely with this. Give feedback as close to the event as possible to reinforce the connection with the behavior that you want to see again in the future, and make it as personal as you can. Recognize individual strengths and contributions that align with each teammate's unique skill. I think about this health teacher that I had. I mean, look, I would hope that maybe if it wasn't her, somebody else would have called it out, but it did start getting this momentum in motion. You could maybe make the argument that I'm not who I am today without this. I don't know. But I do know she called it out, and it made it an awareness to me that I never had before. As much as you can, when you're giving positive feedback, make it very personal. And look, balance criticism with praise. You know, there's this 5-to-1 ratio, 5 positive comments for every critical one. Look, you don't have to be intentional about criticism. It comes pretty natural. I've never heard of a leadership workshop that was like, hey, we're going to teach you how to be a little more critical. Why? It comes pretty natural. When you're thinking intentionally about, all right, I got to make 5 positive comments to earn the right to make 1 negative or perceived negative criticism, now you're being more intentional. You have to literally think sometimes about being positive. It's not because you're a bad person. It's not because you're a monster. It's because you're moving so fast. This is a good practice also in your personal relationships as well. And here's why it's so important. Not that this is a marriage podcast or a relationship podcast. It's easy to take for granted the ones we care about most. This also transcends into business. You know, that 20-year employee that's a peak performer, sometimes it's like, no, we're good. They know how I feel. And all it is criticism after criticism. They have thick skin. I've come to know them. They still deserve some praise and some recognition and some positive feedback. And embed it, when you're giving this positive feedback, embed it in the culture. How do you do this? Well, you start encouraging peer-to-peer recognition. Now you're on a whole nother level. And now you have peers celebrating wins in team settings. This energy that you can create, an environment, is exactly what is needed to retain people. You won't find this in most environments. You're not going to find this in most cultures, and it will be a very unique differentiator for you. So start going to your teammates and say, hey, I shouldn't be the only one that's calling out positive feedback. Listen, when you find somebody doing something right, I want you to talk about it. Now you are starting to build positive momentum. Small, intentional changes can create huge impact. Call out the good in the people. Look, maybe you're still listening and you realize this is an area that you got to get better at. You know, I kind of uncovered a blind spot for you today. But you need a little accountability. You need a little structure, like I did with my boss when he gave me that godforsaken 2 out of a 4. Thought I was going to lose my mind. Maybe, though, through this conversation in this episode today, you say, you know what? I got to get better there. And I just need a little bit of a nudge. Well, I got you covered. Good news. To help you get off to a great start, I've created a resource for you, and it's absolutely free. It's our positive feedback habit tracker that we created specifically for you, specifically for that task-driven, I don't have enough time leader that believes in the power of positive feedback. This is a 4-week habit tracker that will hold you accountable to making this a routine and part of your everyday leadership impact. And we all know the importance of good habits. We know this. And the key to adopting habits is what? You got to get off to a great start. Nothing becomes a habit until we consistently do it intentionally over a period of time. This habit tracker is going to do just that. If you're already subscribed to the show notes, you have already received the habit tracker in your inbox today. But if you have not yet subscribed, you can click to the link. You can click on the link in this episode description from wherever you stream. By the way, if you haven't already subscribed to the show notes, make sure that you do this, because this will be the way moving forward that I'm delivering all of my free content and all of the tools that you're going to need from these episodes. Once you get the habit tracker, print out the second page, put it somewhere that you can see it very easily. It's noticeable, it's recognizable. You're forced to kind of look at it, kind of thing. A planner, a bulletin board, whatever it might be. You lay it out on your desk. Then fill in a circle under the appropriate day of the week. And when you see it, this is going to make sense to you. When you give a compliment, you're filling in the circle. Publicly praise an employee, fill in the circle. Write a thank you note, fill in one of the circles. Do not end your day until you have filled in all three circles under that current day. In the notes section, you'll see it on the habit tracker, write down any significant impacts your efforts made or a pattern maybe that you discovered. When you start seeing wins like this from this as a leader, you're going to see, all right, we are on to something. I love the reaction that I got from that. I saw that, how they responded to that. Wow, I noticed how they lit up when I said what I said. This is going to encourage you and say, you know what? This is a good use of my time. Use the notes section, but also start filling in these circles. Use the habit tracker for 4 weeks. Why 4 weeks? Well, this is going to help you create a new habit of giving positive feedback. Now it becomes who you are, not what you do. Print a new sheet at the beginning of each month until this practice becomes second nature to you. And I would love to hear your feedback on the progress that you're making. Make sure you take a picture of your positive feedback habit tracker, tag me on a social media post, and tell me how it's going for you. This will not only be encouraging to me, but also a way to hold yourself accountable to beginning this new journey. Appreciate you all listening in today. Remember, leadership is about making others better, and positive feedback is a powerful way to do that. Until next time, find someone doing something amazing and tell them about it. And always keep turning the pressure into potential.
The Champion Forum Podcast with Jeff Hancher. Lead, inspire, win.